Hello, we are here today with Mitch Rippee, who is going to be coming into the Catholic Church shortly, and we wanted to ask him to hear if he could to tell some of his story and share some of his journey with us. It's always my belief that we have a little piece of ourselves in each person's journey. We all are on this way toward the Lord, and asked Mitch if he would be able to share his journey. So welcome, Mitch. Thank you for taking the time today to talk and about what you've been doing here. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. 31. Been living in Medina for 21 years now. Moved from Pittsburgh.
We won't hold that against you.
Yeah, most people don't, thank you. I hope you guys don't either. Work in a wood shop making industrial decks to kind of sift plastic. It's kind of a quirky little job, but it kind of pays the bills. Been coaching baseball for 5 years now at Medina High School, and that's about it. 2 brothers. One lives in Rocky River. Mom lives in Florida. Dad lives in the area. So.
Where do you fall in that?
The youngest.
You're the youngest.
Youngest of 3 boys.
Excellent. Good. So now you grew up, then you were a child in Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
then here, and then I know you were baptized Lutheran, correct? Tell me a little bit about your faith as a child.
Sure, yeah. As you said, baptized Lutheran as an infant. More or less, religion was kind of, I don't know if secondary would be the right way to describe it, but more or less, I would say we kind of grew up in a secular household. Religion and faith and all of that was encouraged if I would have pursued it, kind of on my own accord, you know. I guess we were nominal Christians, more or less. My mom tried getting us in Sunday school when my brother and I were younger. You know, it kind of worked out for a couple months, and then we relapsed, I guess, into our typical Sunday habits of football and what have you. Church kind of maybe on Easter with the extended family. Not really praying during meals or anything of that. No scriptural readings or what have you. But 2 very good parents. They're very loving mom and dad without a doubt. And as I mentioned, if it would have been something that was encouraged if I would have walked towards it, you know, more deeply as a young child. But more or less, it was just kind of sports 24/7. And
Yeah. So at what point did something change for you? Because you have a pretty rich training or in education in faith studies. At some point, obviously, it became something important to you.
yeah, as I was saying, the whole religion, God, Christ question was kind of in the background for most of my teenage years. I would say probably around 16, 17, I would have identified myself as an atheist or agnostic, but I still had many different pursuits, you know, friends, social life, you know, things of that nature, so I didn't really give it too much attention at that moment. I would say when I reached my early 20s, maybe 21, 22, I started to investigate it a little more deeply, and in so doing I became far more convinced or forthright, or I expressed my atheism and my skepticism and what have you much more vocally and socially. And while all that was going on, it was kind of a tough moral, emotional moment in my life too. So intellectually, I was skeptic. Emotionally, I was kind of depressed more or less because I was becoming convinced that, the logical conclusions of that type of worldview is depressing, yes, not too joyful. So that went on for a few years, I would imagine, and then the grace of God kind of shook me, I guess, if you will, and kind of made me realize life needed to be lived in a different way, and the outcome of that was deeper interest in the intellectual side of it, I guess, why it makes sense, arguments, and things of that nature. So kind of ever since then, it's been a growing momentum.
What were your friends like when you were going through that? Did you find culturally a lot of support for that atheism and agnosticism?
The wider culture, I guess you could say, we kind of live, especially a handful of years ago, in the new atheism movement. So it was the fashionable thing to do, the new skeptic or what have you. Like the Dawkins and the Christopher Hitchens and all those who kind of attacked religion and Christianity in particular. So I found a home with them, I guess. As far as my immediate friends, it didn't seem to be a big deal one way or the other, you know what I mean? They knew I was kind of a skeptic, atheist, but we kind of just went about our own friendship and our own activities almost as if nothing too much has changed, which, looking back on it, I kind of wish there was someone there, a strong Christian or a strong Catholic who would have kind of called me out and challenged me a little more deeply. But yeah, my friends were still my friends, and I wouldn't say it was, personally it was kind of ruining me, but I still had a group of friends that we stuck pretty close.
Mm-hmm. I think at least I see, it feels like there's just not a lot of thought, that there's so much that occupies our time and our focus and our energy, like you said, with sports or just out in the culture, that it's easy to kind of be like something that you set aside, and that it really maybe you think that maybe you don't need that, or that's something for other people.
Exactly. Yeah, like almost like a hobby, like, oh, you're into those type of questions or search for meaning or whatever. That's kind of your own prerogative type of thing, but let's just continue to do what we're doing and, be friends the way we've been friends. And like I said, it's easy to be distracted. Those are challenging things to think about because it kind of stirs your foundations. So, in the whole non-judgmental kind of climate we live in, whatever you believe, that's your thing. I won't interfere. So I guess all that kind of helped foster not being challenged by it or not getting called out on it. Kind of the world we live in. Yeah. I would say.
So at some point along the way that changed. I mean, do you remember, was there like something that happened, or was it just sort of a gradual longing for something more?
Yeah, well, I think the whole process was a longing for something more. I was just unaware of it, you know what I mean? I was kind of going about my own thing, needing God, needing Christ, wanting redemption and salvation, but not knowing or thinking it was on offer, And so that was kind of in the background the whole time. But to answer your question, there was a few moments of, I guess, more gravity, but at the same time, it's also been extended over a long period of time. The reality of sin, kind of awoke in me, and you're living your life not as it was meant to be, and that kind of makes you think about, well, why is there a right way to do things? Morality and am I more than just this existence during these handful of years on earth? Like, is there something deeper in me, like a soul? All those sorts of things. Am I accountable? What is why do I have a conscience? Where does that voice come from? Kind of all those sorts of things, along with, the emotional and problems going on throughout the whole time.
So then you started to take some steps in that to formally investigate all of that. Tell us what you did then.
Yeah, well, I became convinced, I think would probably be an accurate word, call it the grace of faith. I began to think not only was there a God, but that God has been revealed in Christ. The other religions didn't seem to wake me or shake me, or nothing as absolute was on offer as this Jesus of Nazareth. And who was he? Who did he say to be? Is he who he says he is? All those sorts of things. So from the skepticism, atheism, kind of, once I became, the first stirrings of faith began happening, I guess it kind of just carried over into religious thinking, Christian thinking.
Had you looked at other non-Christian faiths?
Yeah, not strictly or all that closely.
Okay.
Kind of Buddhism kind of was fashionable, I guess, kind of when I was an atheist, because I didn't really have to surrender to like a person, something
Interesting.
concrete.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of enticed me because of that, more so than like any of the other arguments to it, or is it true or is it not true, is kind of more comfortable than anything. But no, not in any serious way did I read too deeply into that. But started reading C.S. Lewis and G.K. Chesterton, and one thing leads to another, and here we are.
Yeah, excellent. Did you have any Catholic friends at the time, or what? Was it just through your reading that brought you to Catholicism then?
I knew people who were Catholic, and in maybe some nominal way they're my friends, but we didn't have any deep relationship, and the friendship we shared, it wasn't really a religious or a spiritual friendship. It was just more of a cultural thing. So I guess I started out what Lewis would call mere Christianity, just believe Jesus is the Son of God, original sin, actual sins, the need for redemption, all those sorts of pillars of the Christian faith. And then I guess my curiosity just kept leading. There's a lot of different denominations, and some of the Christian religions differ on certain things. So the question of authority, who has authority, the Eucharist, what's the truth of that, the papacy, all those sorts of things. Kind of started bubbling up inside me, and I would say, I started out with Chesterton even before I wanted to become Catholic or even thought Catholicism was true, and he always spoke to me almost as like a dear friend. I just kind of liked the way he articulated the Catholic thing, as he would call it. But Bishop Barron started with the Word on Fire movement, and I was like, this guy is extremely intelligent. He's all about presenting the truth of Christ in a way that's engaging and forceful. So I was kind of grabbed by that quite a bit. Pints with Aquinas, it's a podcast. Matt Fradd, he would always have his guest on, St. Thomas Aquinas, kind of those sorts of things. Kind of all just built momentum, and after a while, all this was kind of going on for a couple years, and then after a while I said, well, if I've become to believe the Catholic Church is the authoritative church, has the true teaching, has the charism of doctrines and, all those sorts of things, where I wasn't quite, the other Christian denominations didn't have that logical understanding or framework, or even the historical process of, apostolic succession and all that. So after a while, I just said, no more hanging on the fence. I kind of just got to go forward with it. And that's when I reached out to Jenny. Well, actually, I think it was Summer Kish, yeah.
Tell us that story. I think that's kind of unusual.
I think I was just attending Mass one day, and the pamphlet or what have you, I saw a call to PSR volunteers or something of the sort, and I was like, oh, that's something I should do. I'm an introvert by nature. I kind of don't mind being kept to myself in a certain sense, but I'm like, well, I need to do something, kind of get more involved. So I called Summer, and I told her I was interested, but wasn't Catholic at the time, so she kind of got me hooked up with Dave Haney and Kevin Pyatt, helping out with the 8th graders. And then while all that was going on, I also kind of told her I was wanting the process of becoming Catholic, and that's when she had me reach out to Jenny. And we kind of met last September. September, yeah. And ever since then, we've been going through the RCIA process. And here we are.
Let's back up a minute. You said you had been coming to Mass.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point did you start coming? Do you remember the first Mass that you came to? What point along the way you decided to hang out and see what this was all about?
Yeah, I don't specifically remember all the details of the first Mass. A lot of it was new to me.
Yeah.
Kind of the prayers and the response of the laity and the bodily motions, the kneeling, the rising, and the crossing. So I was kind of out of the loop, I guess. I'm kind of observing other people, like, what's going on here, type of thing. I remember being a little nervous, because it was kind of like a new ball game for me. But the more I kept coming, the Mass kind of started ingraining in my body with the movements and with my mind and with the prayers. And just kind of kept going forward with that.
I always think it's one of those things that we who are Catholic, assume everybody in church also is Catholic. Mm-hmm. And, might be surprised to know, whether they're a spouse of a Catholic like Dom, or somebody just coming to check it out, perhaps like you, that you never know who's all around you. So.
Yeah, I remember being very impressed that everyone was always on point with the prayers and the motions. I'm like, wow, these people practice quite a bit. That's impressive. I don't think I'll ever be able to get this whole thing down. But
let me ask a question too. I know that you had told me when you first came that you'd probably been coming to Mass here maybe 2, 3, 4. You weren't exactly specific before September coming here to Mass, and before you kind of heard the call from Summer, and then she said, gee, there is a process that you could go through to become Catholic, and kind of put me on your radar. But were you, at that time, that September, or a little bit before, had you started your master's degree course at Holy Apostles?
Yes, I believe so. I don't keep track of dates all that well in my mind, but probably, I want to say a little bit before that, I started my Catholic theology training at Holy Apostles. So.
Yes. always just amazing to me, just a blessing, and just the part of my job that I'm just astounds me, that God is calling people and touching people, and they're led here to our door. And it's like, whoa, what an amazing journey, and what a gift it is then to join in with that journey and kind of see where you've been and learn from you, kind of how God is working in your life, and just kind of be an observer and sitting back and watching that all unfold for me too is just really a blessing. So
Thank you.
That must have been an unusual phone call to get, somebody who has studied, because what we didn't say was you have a bachelor's degree also in
biblical studies.
biblical
from
studies.
Baptist University.
Yeah, so that's, somebody who has such a foundation in Christianity, but then to also be embarking on this master's program then in Catholicism or Catholic theology.
So yeah, like I said, I was kind of on the fences, now studying Catholic theology in a more formal way, I guess. But so in my mind, my intellect, I was convinced of its truth, and in my will, thought it was such a beautiful thing, the whole, the Catholic tradition and all those sorts of things, but I wasn't moving forward yet, so I guess I was a little nervous, but what a blessing it was to first meet Summer and then Jenny, and then get to know Dave and Kevin. I feel like God really surrounded me with good, genuine, faithful Catholics who love Christ and could just really welcome me into a new community that it made the transition not only easier but enjoyable, without a doubt.
when you mentioned the welcoming, you went through the rite of welcome in February, and by that time you expressed that there's a question during the rite of welcome about, what are you looking for, or what you were asking of God's church, and you said the Eucharist, and by that time you were very much hungering and thirsting for the Lord in the Eucharist, and we're really starting to explore Eucharistic devotion and adoration, and so all of that, God is just pulling you, and you're being open to that and desiring of that. So by the time you were welcomed officially through a rite of welcome, you were well on your way of just having what the church really requires of a person going through that rite of welcome, which is just a desire, a hunger and thirst for not only more knowledge, but God's presence in all the ways that he can be present. So it was real easy to determine that Mitch was ready. It was just like, let's just sign him up. He's ready. But we needed to go through kind of a process, and then of course just the experience of life in the church and how that kind of changed then after February. Who would have thought in February through your rite of welcome that look what's going to happen just in a little bit of time and change things pretty drastically. But gave us that opportunity too to continue to prepare and share and dialogue and kind of experience how the church reacts and changes and meets different needs. So
it definitely, I think it was a blessing in some sort of ways, kind of getting to learn the devotions and
have a little more time.
How a church parish operates on ground level with the changing world around us and the situations, and as you said, getting to know the church community and feeling that bond of the body of Christ type of thing. So it feels like a long time, and I grow a little impatient, I guess, but it's all been proper and for the best to kind of ease my way in.
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine a better environment to learn about the parish community than by teaching PSR with a couple of other, like you said, well-grounded Catholics and who are great guys themselves, and good role models. So yeah, that's the thing that I think some people watching this might already know you because you've had their children in PSR. So that's kind of a neat twist on things.
And kind of you always were, you kind of were open to God's call all along, kind of almost unquestioning. It's like, I just feel like I need to read this, or I need to go and explore this more, or I feel a need to teach. I have some gifts, and so you hear the need for PSR teachers. It's like, well, I could do that. It's like, you're not Catholic yet, but you felt very much ready, knowledgeable to share your gifts there. So kind of that openness to just, I think of Peter just jumping out of the boat and, following, just Jesus' call to the first disciples when we read those stories in the scriptures, and it was so quickly, communicated as if it was just such an instantaneous, come, follow me, and they're like, okay, I'm fine, we'll just, see you, Dad, see you, Mom, I'm just gonna leave my occupation and I'm gonna go follow this guy. And part of that is it's longer than that. I'm sure it was in scriptures too, filling in kind of the lines in between, but still that openness to say, I have these gifts, I have these desires, I'm going to follow that where that leads me. It's really cool.
So what was the reaction of your family as you started to get into studying more about faith in general, and then as you decided to commit to the Catholic Church?
They encouraged it. Like, as we touched on before, we hadn't always been a devoutly practicing Christian family. A good family, we love each other, and the support of my family is amazing in all arenas of life. So when they kind of understood my story or my conversion, and they kind of saw me moving towards that and the study, and not only the study but the practice and what have you. I'm very thankful I didn't meet too much, not really any confrontation from my immediate family. They were all about it, so very thankful for that.
And who have you chosen for your confirmation sponsor?
Dave Haney.
Excellent.
Thanks, Dave.
We need to interview Dave next. We need to get his story.
Yes. Yeah.
It'd be kind of amazing how you've got this kind of Baptist background to Catholicism, and Dave has that too. And and the Lord led you right to Dave Haney, almost a direct line. Before you even became Catholic. So.
Yeah. God knows what he's up to.
Yeah, exactly. Of all the people in the Catholic Church that you could have met, it's like, here's the parish, here's the person, just going to link you right up.
I think it has a lot that's a good example of what you opened up with about how our stories are kind of intertwined, and we find our stories in other people's stories. So kind of, meeting Dave, realizing what I'm going through, I might be experiencing it, uniquely, or think I'm kind of the only one who's been through this experience, but you're immediately connected with someone who understands a little bit of what you're going through in the process and the transition, and that's always comforting, for sure. And challenging, yes.
Sure, right. What would you say to somebody else who's maybe watching this, who's sort of on the fence about this, or maybe feeling a tug to think about this a little bit more, or maybe hasn't yet taken that step? Do you have any words of advice?
Take the step. Are you talking specifically about the Catholic faith, or?
Sure, yes. Somebody who's perhaps, maybe there's a spouse out there, or somebody who's inquiring or curious, doesn't quite know if this is for them.
Yeah. Prayerful, stay in prayer about it. Obviously, ask be open to what God wants to show you and where He wants to lead you. Try to be fair when you're kind of sorting out the arguments for and against, and I think you'll be moved to see the goodness and the beauty and the truth of the Catholic tradition if you're open to it. We're kind of thrown into a strange world, you know. There's a lot of things on offer, and what and whom is probably be a better way to put it, is your heart made for, you know. And obviously the answer to that is Christ, and we get that most readily, I would argue and say most fully sacramentally, and also magisterially with the teaching and through the Catholic Church. And I believe the intellect rests in the truth, and the heart rests in love and the God's goodness, and that's what the Church is for. So, and then of course that's a process, you know. It takes a lifetime to fully welcome that and learn it and practice it steadily and faithfully. But I think that's the first move, is coming to the Catholic Church and seeing the home for our souls, you know, that it offers us.
You talked about some of the resources that you studied, Bishop Barron, and some of the podcasts and things. Are there things that you would call out that were instrumental along the way that people might want to check out, whether informed or things you've read?
In terms of the truth of the Catholic faith and authors.
What did you find helpful?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Bishop Barron's Word on Fire ministry or apostolate. I'm not technically sure. Maybe it's both.
I'm not sure either.
You can
Great,
just Google
great.
Word on Fire, you'll find it.
Great resource. Any question, insight that you can possibly arise in your mind or your heart while you're kind of thinking of those things, I think they address it most likely in one way or another, and they do it very intelligently and wonderfully. Their productions are beautiful, you know. They just came out with the Word on Fire Bible. It's just a gorgeous piece of art. Catholic Answers is another. They're really good, at least for me. Like, what one question do you have, or are you tied up on, or something that doesn't make sense? And one of their apologists are terrific at, you know, answering those things and kind of explaining them through. G.K. Chesterton, love G.K. Chesterton. St. John Henry Newman was very helpful. So yeah, I mean, resources are probably endless, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind that probably had the most impact on me personally. Thank you. Thank you for your slow, steady, patient process of leading me along, and we're only a few days away now.
I know,
so
just a week.
Very exciting, and thank you for having me here today and giving me the chance to kind of say a word or two about my journey home.
Well, I'm so glad to have you, because it feels like I can just see such great things that the Lord has in store for you, and it's very exciting to have a little window into that. So thank you. And thanks very much for joining us, and we'll hopefully have more of these stories coming up with some other people. As we mentioned, other people who have joined the church along the way. We're eager to hear your stories as well. So hopefully we'll have more of these to come.